bended knee I come, with a humble heart I come.
Morning. It's good to have everyone here this morning. We're out of the book of Luke, chapter 16, starting in verse 1. You know, reading the story, it brings to mind, we've often heard like people that have lost their fortunes. You know, they were millionaires and lost their millions, and all of a sudden they're suicidal. They want to die. They gotta get used to life without money. Billionaires, also, it's weird. It's like billionaires have billions of dollars and they go down to millions and they want to kill themselves. I'm like, man, they still got more money than we got, you know. And they're saying, yeah, but they have to get used to another type of class of living, which they're not used to. And I think about that because those who have earned what they have because they worked for it, I mean, they started at the bottom and worked themselves up. If they were to lose it all, they know what to do at the bottom because they've been there before. But other people that have, were privileged, were born into a certain lifestyle, a certain way of living, they've had millions since they were kids or whatever, they were born that way, and they lose it all. They have no idea of what to do, And it just goes to show this man here, this story that this is talking about, and I'll get into the gist of it, but he says, he also said to his disciples, there was a certain rich man who had a steward, and an occasion was brought to him that this man was wasting his goods. He was spending money that wasn't even his. So he called and said to him, what is this I hear about you? Give an account of your stewardship, for you can no longer be steward. This is all he knew how to do. The steward said within himself, what shall I do? For my master is taking the stewardship away from me. I cannot dig. I am ashamed to beg. Now, of course, the rich man here, right, is God. The steward here, in this context, are the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the scribes, right? Now, you see how this is related. This is Christ's way of explaining what's going on, right? Their stewardship's about to be taken away. Well, Christ is there now, right? It's going to be another way of living that they're not used to. And they're saying, man, we don't know how to do except what we do here. They know how to dress really well. They know how to pray in public. They know how to use people. And that was their problem, But the way he goes about this, it sounds, to me, when I read the story, I was like, there's so many different aspects to the story that, we don't know which one to take. It says, then the steward said within himself, what shall I do? For my master is taking a stewardship away. I cannot dig. I am ashamed to beg. It says, I have resolved what to do. That when I am put out of the stewardship, that they may receive me into their houses, right? Now, he's making a plan here. He's saying, well, if God's going to kick me out of stewardship, then I'll set it up in a way that when I am kicked out, those that I help will help me. You see, kind of deceiving. It's kind of deception here if you think about it, right? Because he's going about it the sinful way. He's actually still stealing from God, but he's putting it in a way where he's getting God something out of it, right? It says, so he called every one of his master's debtors to him and said to the first, how much do you owe my master? And he said, 100 measures of oil. So he said to him, take your bill and sit down quickly and write 50 out of the 100, half off, right? Remember, that money is not his. It belongs to his master, right? I want you to get that through your head, right? That money is not his money. That's his master's money. And he's telling them, how much do you owe? He says, I owe 100. He says, all right, quickly sit down and write down 50, and I'll turn that tab in. Doing him a favor and getting God something out of it, right? It says, And he said, so the master commended the unjust steward because he had dealt shrewdly. For the sons of this world are more shrewd in their generation than the sons of light. It says, and I say to you, make friends for yourselves by unrighteous mammon, that when you fail, they may receive you into an everlasting home. All right, mammon, of course, is speaking of the wealth and monetary things of this world. Now, I want you to understand, too, that, they say, well, money, and we often hear, I heard this one guy at church one time. He got up behind the pulpit. He says, the love of money is the sin part of it. And I'm like, no, he didn't say the love of money. He said money is the sin part of it. And I'm like, no, it's the love of money that makes it the sin. But realistically, the money part is the mammon, because the money is going to be there or it's not going to be there. A lot of people, in order for them not to lose that money, kind of give up on God, if you think about it. Because they're saying, well, the money is more important because the money is what saves me in this world. And I'm saying, is it truly the money that saves you while in this world? Is it the monetary part that saves you while in this world? And I say, no, it's not. And if you're dedicated to serving the mammon part, then you're going to have a difficult time serving God, because you can't serve God and mammon at the same time. It just can't be done, because you're going to love one and you're going to despise the other. That's how it works. Now, what is Adrian saying? He's saying that money is no good, and I'm saying it is. I know it pays the bills and it does this and it does that. Gets us around, puts fuel in our vehicles and all this other stuff. I get it. It's important to have. But what I'm saying is, if that money is your driving force, that's where the sin is at. Because the money shouldn't be the driving force of your life. God should be the driving force in your life, not the money. The money's there. And you're going to have it or you're going to lose it. Act like this steward did. The steward was there in charge of God's money, or of his things. And he took it for granted, saying, well, you know what? I'll deal with it later. I know it's God's. It's not a big deal. I'll play my part the way it needs to be part. But when it came time to show accountability for that money, right? That's where he messed up, because he had it all loaned out, but never got anything back. If you think about what the Pharisees were doing there in the first century, they were out in public, putting on these shows and, walking around as religious men, well-dressed, making these long prayers in front of people and stuff. But even Christ says, man, they were like whitewashed tombs with the bones of men in those tombs. In other words, everything they were doing wasn't for life. It was for death. Spiritually, they were dying. And that's the thing about religion, is what we got to understand. Religion can be a positive thing or it could be a very negative thing, depending on how you take it. How do you take religion? When it comes to our religion, when it comes to Christianity and to serving God, we have to be faithful and true to God. In other words, God is the driving force of our lives. That's the way it needs to be. It has to be done that way. Because if it's not done that way, it's a mistake. You're doing it for the wrong reason. In today's society, now, here in the first century, they're talking about the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the scribes. In our society, you got other preachers behind the pulpit that you've often hear me talk about. These men that stand behind cameras, and they're preaching and teaching and, send money and do this. And they're preaching for the money. They're preaching for the prestige. They're preaching for the acceptance of the people. And I'm saying that could be a big, big mistake. Because they're doing it for the wrong reason. They're not doing it to glorify God, but for their own self-gain. And I'm saying, where is the life in that? That's the mistake. And it's something that's been practiced over and over and over again. As a matter of fact, who talked about the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the scribes before their time, before they even were around, was the prophets were warning the people of such men that would do such things. And it's still going on today. My point? Humanity is humanity. And we're driven by different things. Some, as a matter of fact, y'all have heard of Max Lucado, of course, I know. And I remember when I first read his first book, the first book he wrote, man, I thought that was outstanding writing. The man he's a brilliant guy. The way he wrote that book and how he glorified God and how much he loved God and, how he wanted to reach out. And he went to the point of, I'm not taking money from the church, I'm just living off what I'm writing and stuff like that. That's it. Everything that comes into the church stays with the church, And I was amazed with this man. I was like, wow, he's so brilliant. There's no better, preacher than him or Christian than him at the time. And then I read a second book. And I was like, well, okay, this is getting weird. Third book was like, whoa. He left out baptism and stuff. He went total 180. Ruba Shelley. First writings that he did, wow. I was astounded by this guy. Wow. I was like, man, he's so powerful. I was like, man, I'm so moved by him and everything. Second book, whoa. Like, where's he going with this? Third, I don't even want to mention the guy's name anymore after that, But this is humanity. A lot of times people get lost. People are like, yeah, they start giving advice. You know what? If you were to take it in this direction, I think you could reach out to more people. And they start listening to the people and forget about God. There's a direction set for us already in the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's here already. This is the advice that we're supposed to be taking. Not the advice of people telling us how to get more out from people, how to be more gainful, how to reach out to. You're not reaching. All you're doing is bringing people in for propaganda almost, because it's not about God anymore. It becomes about, what you feel in your heart, what you think is right. That's wrong. And you start getting driven by money, which is mammon, and you start getting away from God. Because as God says, as Christ says here, he says you can't serve both mammon and God because you'll love one and despise the other. So you have to make a choice in life. What are you going to do and who are you going to follow? Will you follow God? Or will you be driven away by money? A lot of men have lost their souls because of money. And I want to take it back to the beginning when I was talking about it. When I was raised as a kid, I'm not saying we were dirt poor and we didn't have anything. I'm not going to say that because that'd be deceitful. I'm not saying we had a lot, but we had. We owned a farm. We had a farm. We did farming. But on top of it wasn't like, I lived in some, mansion somewhere and, I was being pampered day and night. It was nothing like that. I was out there, picking with the rest of the people that were picking, picking the vegetables that we were doing, whether it was squash or okra, whatever it was. We were out there, we were working alongside of them. And once they'd go home, we continued to work because then we had to grade the stuff. And once we graded or washed it, we had to crate it up, pack it onto the trucks, and then wait till early in the morning, 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, and we take off to go deliver. This was a daily routine. So yeah, it was like, I grew up, I know how to work the fields. I know because I was there. Now, I may not be as good as some farmers that do it constantly, but the little experience that I have at it, for which, it was throughout my youth, You know? How many people here, I'll show of hands only, how many here have eaten possum? Yeah, you have? That's surprising. Well, we didn't waste anything. Yeah, okay? Possum got into the chicken shed one time, started trying to tear up some chickens and some eggs and stuff, and my brother got out there and shot it. Unbeknownst to me, my mother got out there and peeled it and gutted it and all that stuff, wrapped it up, put it in the freezer. I didn't know that. Then I killed a possum with my hands. Yeah. I had a rebar and stabbed it through it. So I brought it home all proud. Look what I did. I killed me a possum. Unbeknownst to me again, my mother peeled and gutted, wrapped it up, put it in the freezer. See, we didn't know about that. She did all that behind our backs. Got home from school one day and a big old pot of beans and rice ready to go. Had a stew going, vermicelli. And we had meat in there, and I thought it was chicken meat. Cooked up real nice and everything. And we just couldn't eat. That was the best chicken we've ever had, so we thought. So she told us it was that possum, those possums that we... So yeah, I've eaten possum, and I'll tell you what, it was pretty good. It was better than starving. And I'll tell you another thing about farming, not to get off subject here, but if we had okra going that season, we had it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Crookneck squash, same thing. We learned to survive. Like I said, we didn't have much, but we did have. So we know how to survive. Other people that have been, like I said, born into, where they already had, big houses and a lot of money, and they lose all that, all of a sudden they get suicidal because they're like, well, what am I going to do now? I don't know how to work with my hands. I don't know how to beg. They don't know how to do anything. That's all they knew. That's what the Pharisees are saying here. They're saying, well, I don't know how to do anything except what I've been doing. How am I going to get out there and start begging with the beggars? Sometimes you got to do what you don't want to do, but to make it meet. And the thing about it is, if you have God on your side, it doesn't matter what you do because you're doing it for a righteous reason. You got to remember that. Let God be the driving force in your life, because no matter what happens to you, whether you're on top of the world or you're way at the bottom, it doesn't matter. If God is with you, you are safe because you're blessed. A lot of people don't see the blessings in being poor. And being poor, you can't be driven. I mean, it's like, I don't have anything, how can I worship money if I don't have any money? How can I let that be the driving force for me if I don't even have any? Let God be the driving force of everybody's life. Anybody can have God, rich or poor. That's the whole thing about it. It says here, no servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. That was the point that Christ was making to his disciples. And last week you heard me talking about these men who came to Christ and they were true in the beginning, but all of a sudden they changed their mind about it. And they left Christ out of things because they lusted after the women of the congregation. They lusted after the money of the congregation. And they wanted to revert back to doing things where people are responding to them instead of responding to God. And that is a problem. When we get into these positions that we're in already, where we're here behind the pulpit and people see you as something, but realistically, we try to make ourselves out to be better than God. And that is the problem. We have to remain focused. We have to remain faithful to God, no matter what the circumstance may call for. God sent his only begotten Son into this world to give his life for you. And we should appreciate that, because that price was a great price. That was the price that God had to pay. He had to see his son be tortured. He had to see his son be crucified and killed. Not that anyone took his life. He laid his life down. It was scripture. It was supposed to be done that way. But imagine that being your kid. And I want you to imagine that. Imagine if you sacrificed your only kid for the sake of the drug addict or the drunk or that child molester. And then they don't even appreciate it. They spit all over it. How angry would you be? That's why God is long-suffering. That's why he's so patient with us. Because we're such a rebellious people that we're willing to put money ahead of his son. And that is a problem. If you think about it, it's truly a problem. If you're here this morning, you'd like to respond to this lesson, I invite you to come forward. Right? This lesson has led you to believe. I hope it did. And I hope you understand the premise of this lesson, is that we have to be faithful to God. Remember, it's by our faith. And here, before I even close up, I want to go to another passage real quick. I'm sorry. Here it is. I'm getting to it. I want you to listen to this, ladies. Especially you ladies, listen to this. It says, wives, likewise, be submissive to your own husbands, that even if some do not obey the word, they without a word may be won by the conduct of their wives, when they observe your chaste conduct accompanied by fear. All right? It says, do not let your adornment be merely outward, arranging of the hair, wearing of gold, or putting on a fine apparel. Rather, let it be the hidden person of the heart, with the incorruptible beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is very precious in the sight of God. You women don't understand how powerful you really are towards men. Y'all miss this sometimes. Y'all think, well, it's just me. He does what he wants. He does it how he wants. But it's how you conduct yourself in front of your man that will determine if that man will be saved or not. Because if he has nothing to do with Christ, it's because of you that he may come to Christ. That's what Peter is saying here, right? He says, for in this manner, in former times, the holy women who trusted in God also adorned themselves, being submissive to their own husbands, as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, whose daughters you are if you do good and are not afraid with any terror. That happened to me. I was lost. Yeah, we both came to Christ, but I got lost back into the world. But it was Debbie's faithfulness to God that continued going to church, not arguing with me, not nagging me, none of that stuff. Just being a Christian woman finally made me realize what was wrong, and I felt ashamed about it. If you are not that woman, you need to reevaluate who you are and what you stand for. Are you for God? And if you are, then stand with God in truth and be obedient to him. If this lesson has led you to believe, then why not repent, change your mind and heart about the way you're living outside of God and come to God? Why not confess that Jesus Christ is the Son of God and that he died for your sins? And why not be baptized for the remission of your sins? Then you can know definitively that you are with God for all eternity, as long as you remain faithful to God. If you're willing to do that, I invite you to do it as we stand and we sing the song of invitation.
On bended knee I come, with a humble